The blood came up dark, almost black in the pre-dawn light of the gunshot bathroom. Vincent Castle watched it swirl in the porcelain sink, mixing with the water from the tap he had turned on to mask the sound of his coughing. 68 years old, and his body was betraying him one cell at a time, cancer eating through his lungs like termites through old wood. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, looked at the red smear there, and felt nothing. He had seen so much blood in his life that his own hardly seemed worth noticing. The mirror showed him what time and war had made. A face like weathered leather, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing, white hair cut military short because some habits never died. The scar along his jawline, courtesy of shrapnel in Hugh City, 1968. The crooked nose, broken by a rifle butt during hand-to-hand combat he should not have survived. 56 years since Vietnam, and he could still smell the jungle rot, still hear the screams, still see the faces. 127 faces, to be exact. He and Jack had kept count. Vincent turned off the water and walked back into the main room of Castle's firearms, his shop, his world, the only thing he had left after his wife died and his son stopped calling. The place smelled like gun oil and old coffee, smells that reminded him of forward operating bases and fire-based bunkers, places where men became brothers because they had no choice. The walls were covered with photographs. Marines in Vietnam, SEALs in the Gulf, Rangers in Iraq. Young men with old eyes, holding weapons and wearing smiles that never reached past their lips. In the center of the main wall, larger than the rest, was a photograph from 1969. Two Marines, both 19 years old, covered in mud and blood, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from 36 hours of continuous combat. Vincent Castle and Jack Harrigan. Brothers, though no blood connected them, spotter and shooter. 127 confirmed kills together. Each one a face Vincent could recall if he closed his eyes. The photograph was taken 3 days after Firebase Delta, where they had held off 2 companies of North Vietnamese Army regulars with nothing but their rifles, their training, and the kind of desperate courage that comes when dying is certain, but surrender is impossible. Jack was smiling in that photograph. Jack was always smiling back then, before Firebase Coral, before the lie, before everything turned to ash. The wall clock read 6:47. Vincent had been awake for 3 hours already, unable to sleep past 4 in the morning, another gift from the war. Insomnia and nightmares, his constant companions for half a century. The doctors had given him pills. He flushed them. Pills made you soft, made you forget. And Vincent had learned long ago that forgetting was the same as dying. The dead deserved to be remembered, even the ones you killed, especially the ones you killed. The bell above the door chimed. Vincent looked up from the Springfield he was cleaning. A beautiful rifle, 70 years old and still true, the kind of weapon that reminded him why he loved this work. The customer was young, maybe 22, wearing tactical gear from a surplus store, and the kind of confidence that comes from playing too many video games. "What can I do for you?" Vincent said. His voice was gravel, decades of cigarettes and screaming orders across firefights. The young man pointed at an AR-15 on the wall. "That one. I want that one for home defense." Vincent set down the Springfield and studied the kid. Soft hands, no calluses, eyes that had never seen violence, not real violence. "You military?" "No, sir. Ever shot anyone?" The question hung in the air like smoke. The young man shifted his weight, suddenly uncomfortable. "No." Vincent stared at him for a long moment, the way he used to stare at new replacements in Vietnam. Kids who thought war would be like the movies, kids who had no idea what it meant to put a bullet through another human being and watch the light go out of their eyes. "Good," Vincent said finally. "Keep it that way. I will sell you a shotgun. 12 gauge, Remington 870, simple, reliable, impossible to miss with at close range. AR is for people who have already made peace with killing. You have not." The young man opened his mouth to argue, saw something in Vincent's eyes that made him reconsider, and nodded. "Okay, the shotgun then." Vincent sold him the Remington, walked him through the basics, watched him leave. The bell chimed again, and the shop fell back into silence. Vincent returned to the Springfield, his hands moving with the kind of automatic precision that comes from 10,000 repetitions, muscle memory that would persist even as his mind failed, even as the cancer ate him alive. The phone rang at 7:15. Vincent almost did not answer. The only people who called were bill collectors or telemarketers, vultures circling a dying man. But something made him pick up on the fourth ring. Vin. The voice was familiar, though age had roughened it. Is that you? Doc, Vincent said, and felt something shift in his chest, something that was not the cancer. Raymond Coe, combat medic, Vietnam, the man who had saved Jack's life 3 times and Vincent's life twice. The man who had held dying Marines and whispered lies about how they were going to be fine, how they were going home, how their mothers would be proud. They had not spoken in 8 years, not since the last reunion when Doc had shown up confused and repeating himself, early signs of the Alzheimer's that was now erasing him one memory at a time. I found something, Doc said. His voice had that distant quality, like he was speaking from underwater. In Jack's letters, the ones he sent me from Iraq, before he died. Vincent's hand tightened on the phone. Jack Harrigan, dead 19 years as of last month, killed by an IED outside Ramadi. Though Vincent had never quite believed the official story, had never quite accepted that his brother could die from random chance rather than purpose. What did you find? A place, Doc said. He said if something happened to him, we should go there. You and me and Preacher. He said there was something we needed to know, something about Firebase Coral. Firebase Coral. The name hit Vincent like a fist. 54 years since that night, and he had never spoken of it, never written about it, never allowed himself to fully remember. The village, the civilians, the children, the lie that Jack had told to save another man's career, the lie that had haunted Jack for the rest of his life, the lie that Vincent had helped maintain because brotherhood meant covering for each other, even when covering meant living with ghosts. Where? Vincent said. His voice was steady despite the chaos in his chest. Doc paused. I wrote it down, but I cannot find the paper. I keep forgetting where I put things. I am sorry, Vin. I am so sorry. It is okay, Doc. It is okay. Do you remember anything else? Arlington, Doc said. His grave. Something at his grave. Or maybe that is wrong. Maybe I dream that. I dream a lot now, Vin. I cannot tell anymore what is real and what I made up. Vincent closed his eyes. Arlington National Cemetery. Jack had a memorial stone there, though his ashes had been scattered in the Pacific according to his ex-wife's wishes. The same ex-wife who had blamed the Marine Corps for destroying him, blamed Vietnam for making him into someone she could not love. Vincent had not been invited to the scattering. He had found out about it 3 months later, too late to say goodbye. I will figure it out, Doc, Vincent said. You did good calling me. Did I call you yesterday too? Doc asked. I feel like maybe I did, but I cannot remember. You did, Vincent lied. The kind of gentle lie he had learned to tell, the kind that made life bearable. 3 times, but it is okay. Call me anytime. After he hung up, Vincent stood in the silence of his shop, surrounded by weapons and memories, and felt the weight of 56 years pressing down on him like water. He had maybe 6 months left, probably less. The cancer was stage 4, inoperable, spreading. The doctors had offered chemotherapy. Vincent had declined. He had watched men die slowly in VA hospitals, hooked to machines, fighting for weeks or months they did not want. When his time came, he would die clean, no tubes, no false hope, just the slow fade into whatever waited on the other side. But before that, before the end, there was this, Jack's last request, something at Arlington, something about Firebase Coral. Vincent picked up his phone again and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he needed. The phone rang 4 times before a deep voice answered. This is Pastor Yates. Preacher, Vincent said. It is Vin Castle. A pause, then warmth flooding through the line. Vin, brother, it has been too long. Thomas Yates. Preacher. Former Army Ranger, Iraq veteran. The man who had held Jack during his last hours at Walter Reed Medical Center. The man who had prayed over Jack's broken body while Jack wept about Firebase Coral and civilian faces and the weight of too many lies. Preacher had found God during the first Gulf War, not after trauma, but before it, believing that faith would protect him. It had not. His son had died in Kandahar in 2011, blown apart by the same kind of IED that took Jack, and Preacher's faith had cracked but not broken, bent but not shattered. I got a call from Doc, Vincent said, about Jack. He told Preacher everything, the letters, the mention of Arlington, Firebase Coral. When he finished, Preacher was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. Billy Greer contacted me, Preacher said. 2 weeks ago. Vincent felt his chest tighten. William Greer, Colonel William Greer, Jack's commanding officer at Firebase Coral, the man who had given the order to fire on a village full of civilians, the man Jack had protected with a lie that cost Jack everything. Vincent had not heard that name spoken aloud in decades. What did he want? Vincent asked, though he already knew the answer would change everything. He is dying, Preacher said. Heart failure. Weeks maybe, days possibly. He wants to meet. He says he has something of Jack's. Something Jack wanted us to have. Before he died. The shop seemed to tilt. Vincent gripped the edge of the workbench. He said Jack knew, Preacher continued, in Iraq. Knew he was going to die. Left instructions with Billy. In case. Something buried at Arlington, at Jack's memorial stone. Something about the truth. Vincent's mind raced. Jack had known. Had felt it coming, the way soldiers sometimes did. A premonition of death that was more than superstition. And he had prepared. Had left something behind for them. For the men who had been his brothers when blood family had failed him. We have to go, Vincent said. I know, Preacher replied, but there is one more person we need. Who? Jack's daughter, Preacher said. Elizabeth. Liz. Vincent's stomach dropped. Liz Harrigan, Jack's only child, born in 1992, the year after the Gulf War, the year Jack had tried to be a father and failed because the ghost followed him home. Vincent had not spoken to Liz since Jack's funeral in 2005. When she was 13 years old and screaming at the Marines in their dress blues, screaming that they had killed her father, that the Corps had taken him and returned a broken stranger, that she hated them all. Vincent had tried to comfort her. She had spit in his face. She will not come, Vincent said. She will, Preacher said, because it is Jack's last words, and she never got to say goodbye. Vincent knew Preacher was right. Knew it the way he knew that cancer was killing him. Inevitable and certain. He looked at the photograph on the wall, Jack's 19-year-old smile, and made his decision. I will call her, Vincent said. 3 days later, Vincent drove his truck through the Nevada desert toward Las Vegas, watching the sun rise over mountains that looked like broken teeth. His lungs burned with every breath. He had stopped taking the pain medication because it made him fuzzy, made the past blur into the present, and he needed to be sharp for this. Sharp for Jack. The meeting point was a diner on the outskirts of the city, far from the casinos and tourists, a place that served coffee and eggs and asked no questions. Vincent arrived at 6 in the morning, 2 hours early, and sat in a corner booth where he could see the door. Old habits. Always know your exits. Always see who is coming. Doc arrived first, shuffling through the door at 7:30, looking lost. He was 71 years old but looked 80, the Alzheimer's eating him from the inside out. His daughter had driven him from San Diego, waited in the parking lot, ready to intervene if her father became confused. Vincent stood and waved. Doc saw him, smiled with recognition. That was there one moment and gone the next. Vin, Doc said, sitting down. Have we met before? Vietnam, Vincent said gently. We served together. You saved my life, twice. Doc's eyes cleared for a moment. Oh, yes. I remember. You were the spotter for Jackie Harrigan. How is Jack? Vincent's throat tightened. Jack is dead, Doc. 19 years now. Oh, Doc said. Oh, yes, I knew that. I forget sometimes. I am sorry. They sat in silence. Vincent ordered coffee. Doc stared out the window at the desert, seeing something Vincent could not see. Maybe Vietnam, maybe nothing. Just the static of a failing brain. Preacher arrived at 8, bigger than Vincent remembered. Weight gained from years behind a pulpit instead of behind a rifle. He wore a simple shirt and jeans, no clerical collar, but he carried a Bible in his left hand like a weapon. They embraced, hard, the way soldiers do, communicating things that words cannot carry. She is not coming, Preacher said, sitting down. I talked to her yesterday. She hung up on me. Vincent nodded. He had expected this. Liz Harrigan wanted nothing to do with her father's past, nothing to do with the men who had survived when Jack had not. But at 8:45, the door opened and a woman walked in. 32 years old, short dark hair, wearing engineer's practical clothes, carrying anger like a backpack she had worn so long, she no longer noticed the weight. Elizabeth Harrigan, Jack's daughter. She had his eyes, that strange pale blue that could see through lies, and his jaw stubborn and strong. She scanned the diner, found them, and walked over. No greeting, no smile. She sat down across from Vincent and stared at him. "Talk," she said. Vincent told her everything. The call from Doc, the message from Billy Greer, the mention of Arlington and Firebase Coral. He watched her face, saw the muscles in her jaw tighten, saw the way her hands gripped the edge of the table. When he finished, Liz was quiet for a long time. "My father is dead," she said finally. "He has been dead for 19 years. I scattered his ashes myself. There is no grave at Arlington." "There is a memorial stone," Preacher said. "We had it placed in 2007, Section 60, the Iraq and Afghanistan casualties. We thought you knew." "I was not invited," Liz said, and her voice could have cut glass. "We tried to reach you," Vincent said. "Your mother said you wanted nothing to do with the military, with us, with anything connected to your father." "My mother was right," Liz said. "My father chose the Marine Corps over me, over her, over any kind of normal life. He came home from wars, and he was a stranger. He drank, he had nightmares. He would not talk about what he did over there. And then he went back. Again and again. Three wars. Vietnam before I was born. The Gulf War when I was a baby. Iraq when I was a teenager. Every time he came back less. Until there was nothing left but the uniform." She stopped, breathing hard. "So why are you here?" Vincent asked. "Because whatever my father was, whatever he did, he does not deserve to have his name erased," Liz said. "And that is what you are telling me is happening. Someone is trying to bury the truth about Firebase Coral, about what really happened." Vincent nodded slowly. "What did happen?" Liz asked, looking directly at him. Vincent glanced at Preacher, then at Doc, who was staring into his coffee cup. Lost. He made his decision. "Your father killed 127 men in combat," Vincent said. "Confirmed. Probably more that we did not count. Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq. He was the best sniper I ever knew. The best most people ever knew. But he was not proud of it. Every kill weighed on him. He remembered them. All of them." Liz said nothing. "Firebase Coral was different," Vincent continued. "February 1970. We were operating in the Central Highlands. Intelligence said there was a Viet Cong command post in a village. Our CO, Captain William Greer, ordered an artillery strike. Your father scouted the village first, saw civilians, women, children. He radioed Greer, told him no strike, civvies present. Greer overruled him, said intelligence was solid, ordered the strike anyway." Vincent paused, remembering. The radio chatter, Jack's voice strained, desperate. Greer's voice, cold, certain. "Your father refused the order," Vincent said. "Direct insubordination. Greer threatened court-martial. Your father still refused. So Greer called in the strike himself, killed 12 civilians, 8 Marines died in the confusion afterward. Friendly fire. Chaos." Liz's face was pale. "And my father?" "Took the blame," Preacher said quietly. "Greer was going to be court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, maybe imprisoned. He had a wife and 3 kids. Your father had nobody. So Jack said he called the strike, said he misidentified targets. He lied to the investigators, to command, to everyone. Saved Greer's career. Destroyed his own. For 35 years, Vincent said, Jack lived with that lie. Greer got promoted, became a colonel, retired with honors. Your father got a letter of reprimand. It followed him his whole career. Every promotion he should have gotten, blocked. Every commendation, questioned. And he never said a word, never told the truth. Because brotherhood meant protecting each other. Until Iraq, Preacher added, 2005. Greer came to visit Jack at his base. They had dinner. Jack was drunk. Finally told Greer he was done lying, said he was going to confess. Tell the truth about Firebase Coral, clear his own name, let Greer face the consequences. Liz's hands were shaking, and 2 weeks later, my father died. Officially an insurgent IED, Vincent said. Random, wrong place, wrong time. But Jack had told me he felt it coming. Said Greer looked at him during that dinner like he was already dead. You think Greer had him killed? Liz said. I think Greer did not try very hard to change routes when intelligence suggested that road was compromised, Vincent said carefully. The table fell silent. Around them, the diner continued its morning routine, oblivious, coffee cups refilled, orders called, the ordinary world untouched by the weight of old sins. Greer is dying now, Preacher said. Heart failure. Before he died, he contacted me. Said Jack left something. At Arlington. Something about the truth. Something Jack wanted us to find. Liz looked at each of them in turn. Her father's brothers. Old men. Dying. Carrying 50 years of secrets and scars. What do you need from me? She asked. We drive to Arlington, Vincent said. 2,600 miles. We dig up whatever Jack left. We find out the truth, and then we decide what to do with it. Why drive? Liz asked. Why not fly? Vincent gestured to the parking lot where his truck sat. In the back, wrapped in canvas, was an M40 sniper rifle. Vietnam era, the weapon Jack had carried for 3 tours, the weapon that had killed 83 of those 127 men. Because I am bringing that, Vincent said. Jack's rifle, to leave at his grave, and TSA tends to ask questions about weapons. Doc looked up suddenly. Are we going to see Jack? Is Jack here? Soon, Doc, Preacher said. Soon. Liz studied them. 3 old men barely holding together, trying to honor a dead friend's last request. She should say no, should walk away, should let the past stay buried. But those were her father's eyes, looking back at her from Vincent's weathered face. Her father's stubborn loyalty and Preacher's gentle certainty. Her father's ghost and Doc's confused questions. Okay, she said. I will come. They left Las Vegas at noon, 4 people in Vincent's extended cab pickup truck, heading east on Interstate 15 toward Utah and the long, empty highway that would carry them across America. Vincent drove. Liz sat passenger, Preacher and Doc in the back seat, Doc already dozing, Preacher reading his Bible in the desert light. For the first 2 hours, no one spoke. The truck hummed. The air conditioning fought against the Nevada heat. Outside, the desert stretched forever, beautiful and hostile, the way all wildernesses are. Somewhere near the Utah border, Liz broke the silence. Tell me about Vietnam, she said. Not the battles, not the kills. Tell me who my father was before the war. Vincent kept his eyes on the road. Your father was from Pennsylvania, small town. His father was a steel worker, died in a mill accident when Jack was 15. Jack joined the Marines at 17, lied about his age. His mother signed the papers because she could not afford to feed him anymore. He got to Vietnam at 19. I met him at Camp Pendleton stateside during sniper training. We were paired up, spotter and shooter. He could shoot better than anyone I had ever seen. Natural gift. Could read wind like it was talking to him. What else? Liz asked. He was kind, Vincent said. That is what people do not understand about snipers. You think we are cold, distant, but your father cared too much. He cried the first time he killed someone. We were on patrol, ambush. He dropped a VC soldier at 400 meters. Perfect shot. And after, when the adrenaline faded, he sat down and cried. I asked him why. He said he kept thinking about the man's family. Who would miss him? Who would mourn him? From the back seat, Doc's voice, surprisingly clear, said, Jack saved my life at Khe Sanh. I was working on a wounded Marine. Mortar round hit 20 meters away. Shrapnel everywhere. Jack covered me with his own body. Took shrapnel in his back. 3 pieces. I dug them out with tweezers in a bunker while he bit down on a belt. He never screamed. Not once. After I asked him why he did it, he said medics save lives. Snipers take them. Saving a medic was good math. Liz turned to look at Doc. His eyes were focused, present. The Alzheimer's temporarily retreated. Your father talked about you constantly, Doc continued. After you were born, he carried your photograph everywhere. In his helmet, in his pocket, on his rifle stock. He showed everyone, told everyone. My daughter Liz, smart as hell, going to be an engineer, going to build things instead of destroy them. He was so proud. Doc's eyes unfocused again, drifting back to wherever the disease took him. Liz turned back to the windshield, eyes wet. They drove through Utah as the sun began to sink. The landscape changed from desert to mountains, red rock formations that looked like cathedrals built by a god with no mercy. Near the Colorado border, they stopped for gas. Vincent coughed into his hand, saw blood, hid it from the others. 6 months, the doctors had said, maybe less. He could feel it, the cancer spreading, the slow shutdown of systems. He had maybe 3 months, maybe 2. Enough time for this. Enough time to finish what Jack started. When they got back on the road, darkness was falling. Preacher took over driving. Vincent sat passenger, exhausted. Liz and Doc in back, Doc asleep, Liz staring out the window at the stars emerging in the clear mountain sky. My father wrote me letters, Liz said suddenly. From Iraq, I never answered them. Preacher glanced in the rearview mirror but said nothing. He wrote about the weather, Liz continued. About the food. About the other Marines. Stupid things. Nothing important. I threw them away. I was angry. I wanted him to hurt the way he hurt me by leaving. Silence. I wish I had kept them, Liz whispered. He knew you loved him, Preacher said. Even angry love is love, he told me that once. Said you stopped talking to him and it broke his heart, but he understood. Said he had broken too many things in his life. Did not want to break you too. The truck rolled on through the darkness. Behind them, 2,000 miles of America. Ahead, another 600 to go. And at the end, a grave, a truth, and whatever remained of Jack Harrigan's last confession. They drove through the night, trading off drivers, stopping only for gay and bathroom breaks. By dawn, they were in Kansas. The landscape flat and endless. Sky huge, the kind of emptiness that makes you feel small and alone. They stopped at a rest area and made coffee on a portable camp stove that Vincent produced from the truck bed. 4 people standing in the cold morning air, drinking bad coffee, not speaking, just existing together in the space before whatever came next. Vincent's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Mr. Castle? A man's voice. Crisp, military. Yes, this is General Arthur Wade, United States Army. I need to speak with you regarding Colonel Jack Harrigan's memorial at Arlington National Cemetery. Vincent's grip on the phone tightened. What about it? There has been a review of Colonel Harrigan's discharge status. I am calling to inform you that his memorial stone will be removed pending further investigation. The hell it will, Vincent said. Colonel Harrigan was dishonorably discharged in 2005 following an incident involving a superior officer. Dishonorable discharge makes him ineligible for Arlington burial honors. The stone was placed in error. Jack Harrigan served 3 wars, Vincent said, his voice dangerously quiet. 35 years of service, 127 confirmed kills. He bled for this country, and you are going to erase him because of a dishonorable discharge? Regulations are clear, General Wade said. I am sorry, the stone will be removed within 48 hours unless you can provide documentation of discharge status revision. The line went dead. Vincent stood holding the phone, rage and grief warring in his chest. Liz was watching him. What happened? She asked. They are erasing your father, Vincent said. Removing his memorial stone because he died dishonorably. Liz's face went pale, then red. The dishonorable discharge from Iraq when he refused an order. No, Preacher said quietly. When he threatened to expose Billy Greer. That is why they discharged him. To silence him. And now they are erasing him from Arlington. Liz pulled out her phone, dialed, waited. When the voice answered, she spoke clearly. General Wade, this is Elizabeth Harrigan, Jack Harrigan's daughter. You have 48 hours to reconsider removing my father's stone. If you do not, I will release to every news outlet in America the full story of Firebase Coral. How my father lied to protect Colonel Greer. How Greer let my father die in Iraq to keep that lie buried. How the Army has spent 50 years covering up the murder of 12 Vietnamese civilians. Try me. She hung up. Vincent stared at her. Your father would have done the same thing. I am not my father, Liz said, but I will be damned if I let them erase him. They got back in the truck. The road stretched ahead. And somewhere in Virginia, at a grave that might not exist by the time they arrived, the truth waited. Jack Harrigan's truth. The last good shot he never took. The confession he died trying to make. Vincent drove and thought about brotherhood, about the lies men tell to protect each other, about the weight of 127 faces, about cancer eating him alive, and time running out and the long road home that Jack never got to travel. In the back seat, Doc mumbled in his sleep, words that might have been Vietnamese or might have been prayer. Beside him, Liz sat with her father's photograph, the one from the letters she had thrown away, the one she had recovered from a box in her mother's attic just before this trip. Jack Harrigan at 30, holding infant Liz, smiling the way fathers smile when they believe they can protect their children from everything the world will do to them. Preacher drove and prayed silently, asking God to give them time, to give them strength, to give them whatever Jack had left behind so that the old warrior could finally rest. And the road rolled on, carrying 4 broken people toward a truth that would break them further. But they went anyway. because Jack had asked. And when brothers ask, you answer, even 19 years late, even when answering might destroy you, even when the only thing waiting at the end is a grave and a memory and the ghost of a man who carried too much and finally broke beneath the weight. The sun climbed higher. Kansas gave way to Missouri. The truck hummed east, and Vincent Castle, dying, drove toward his last mission with Jack Harrigan's rifle in the back, and Jack Harrigan's daughter in the seat beside him, and Jack Harrigan's ghost-riding shotgun the way it had for 56 years, silent and patient and waiting for the truth to finally be told. The sun burned across Missouri farmland as the truck rolled east, eating miles the way old soldiers eat regret, slowly, methodically, without pleasure. Vincent Castle kept his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, the way they had taught him in boot camp 60 years ago, muscle memory outlasting everything else, outlasting youth and health and hope. His lungs felt like broken glass with every breath, but he did not reach for the pills in his pocket. Pain was honest. Pain reminded you that you were still alive, still capable of feeling something other than the dull ache of too many years. In the passenger seat, Liz Harrigan stared out the window at America passing by, vast and indifferent. Farmhouses, silos, small towns with names she would forget before they reached the next state line. She had not slept on the drive from Las Vegas, could not sleep, her mind circling the same questions like water down a drain. Who was her father really? What had he done? Why had he chosen to protect a man like Billy Greer instead of coming home to her? The questions had no answers, only more questions, and the truck rolled on through the heartland carrying 4 people who were bound together by one dead man and the secrets he had left behind. In the back seat, Doc dozed fitfully, his head lolling against the window, occasionally mumbling words that might have been names or might have been nothing, the Alzheimer's erasing him one synapse at a time. Beside him, Preacher read his Bible, lips moving silently, praying or remembering or both. Thomas Yates had learned long ago that prayer and memory were often the same thing, both a reaching back towards something lost, both a conversation with ghosts. They crossed into Illinois just after noon, and Vincent felt the weight of all those miles, all those years pressing down on him like earth on a coffin. He had driven this route before, in 1970, coming home from Vietnam on leave, driving straight through from San Francisco to Philadelphia without stopping, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant seeing their faces again, the 127 men he and Jack had killed. Each one cataloged in his memory like files in a cabinet, each one waiting to be pulled out and examined in the small hours of the morning when sleep would not come. "We need to stop," Liz said quietly, "for gas and food." Vincent nodded and took the next exit, pulling into a truck stop that looked like every truck stop in America, generic and timeless, a place where travelers could pretend they were anywhere or nowhere. He filled the tank while the others went inside. His hands shook slightly as he worked the pump, not from fear, but from the cancer eating his bones, turning him brittle and hollow. 6 months, the doctors had said, but Vincent knew it would be less, could feel his body giving up one system at a time, everything winding down like a clock nobody remembered to wind. Inside the truck stop, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with the sound of dying insects. Vincent found the others at a corner table, Preacher helping Doc navigate a menu that might as well have been written in Sanskrit for all the sense it made to the old medic's failing brain. Liz sat apart, scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by blue light that made her look ghostly and distant. Vincent ordered coffee and sat down. The waitress brought 4 cups and 4 plastic menus and disappeared again into the kitchen. For a long moment, nobody spoke, just 4 people sharing space and silence in the middle of nowhere, halfway to everywhere. "Tell me about the road," Liz said, setting down her phone. "Highway 50. Preacher said it is called the loneliest road in America." "It is," Vincent said. "Runs from California to Maryland. 3,000 miles through the emptiest parts of the country. Nevada, Utah, Colorado. Places where you can drive for hours without seeing another soul. Your father loved it. Said it reminded him of the jungle, the isolation, the quiet. He drove it after the Gulf War, coming home. Took him 9 days. He called me from payphones along the way. Never said much, just that he was driving and thinking and trying to figure out who he was when he was not at war." Preacher looked up from his Bible. Jack told me once that the hardest part of coming home was not the memories. It was the silence. In combat, there is always noise, gunfire, explosions, radios crackling, men shouting, your heart pounding, adrenaline singing in your blood. You live at maximum intensity every moment, and then you come home and there is just quiet, normal life. People complaining about traffic or the weather or their jobs, and none of it matters. None of it feels real. Did he ever feel real again? Liz asked. After the wars, Preacher considered this. Sometimes, when he was with us, other veterans, people who understood, and when he was with you. Liz's jaw tightened. He was never with me. He was always somewhere else. Even when he was physically present, his mind was in Iraq or the Gulf or Vietnam. I would talk to him and he would look at me like he did not recognize me, like I was a stranger. Because he was trying to protect you, Vincent said, from what he had seen, what he had done. Your father killed 127 men. That is not something you bring home to your daughter. That is not something you put on a child. So he put it on himself, Liz said, and it killed him. The table fell silent. The waitress returned with food nobody had ordered but everyone needed. Eggs, toast, bacon, the simple fuel of the road. They ate without speaking, just the scrape of forks on plates. The sound of people going through motions because motion was easier than stillness, easier than confronting the thing they were driving toward. After they finished, Vincent excused himself to the bathroom. He locked the door and coughed until blood came, dark and thick, splattering the white porcelain of the sink. He ran the water and watched it spiral down the drain, taking pieces of him with it. In the mirror, his reflection looked like a stranger, a ghost wearing his face, eyes hollow and haunted. This was what dying looked like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a slow erosion. Cells betraying cells, the body consuming itself from within. When he returned to the table, Preacher was telling a story. Fallujah, 2004. I was embedded with the Marines as a chaplain assistant. Jack was there on his second Iraq tour. We got hit during a patrol. Insurgents, ambush. I took a round through the shoulder, bleeding badly, pinned down behind a burnt-out car. I radioed for help and Jack came. Ran 200 yards through open ground, bullets kicking up dust around him, moving like smoke. He reached me, pulled me behind better cover, used his own body as a shield while he worked to stop the bleeding. I asked him later why he risked his life like that. He said chaplains save souls, snipers take lives. He needed to balance the ledger. Liz listened, her face unreadable. After I was stabilized, Preacher continued, Jack stayed with me until the medevac arrived. We talked. He told me about you, said you were the only good thing he had ever made. Everything else was destruction, but you were creation. He carried your photograph on his rifle stock, showed it to me. You were maybe 12. School picture. He said you had stopped talking to him. Said it broke his heart, but he understood. Said he was a disease and you were healthy, and the healthy cut out disease to survive. That is not fair, Liz said, her voice cracking. He does not get to be noble about abandoning me. He did not abandon you, Vincent said. He removed himself to protect you. There is a difference. Not to a child there is not, Liz shot back. Not to a 13-year-old girl whose father missed her birthday because he was in Iraq. Again, not to a daughter who needed her dad and got letters instead. Letters about the weather, about nothing, about everything except what mattered. What did matter? Preacher asked gently. Liz's eyes filled with tears. I needed him to say he loved me more than the Marines, more than the mission, more than the men he served with. I needed him to choose me, just once, and he never did. Vincent reached across the table and took Liz's hand. His skin was paper thin, spotted with age, but his grip was still strong, still certain. Your father loved you more than his own life, Vincent said. I know because I was there when you were born. February 1992. Jack was on leave from the first Gulf War. He drove straight from the airport to the hospital. 18 hours of labor. He did not leave your mother's side. Not once. And when you were born, when the nurse put you in his arms, he cried, I had seen Jack in combat, seen him kill men, seen him wounded, seen him watch friends die. Never once saw him cry. But holding you, he cried like his heart was breaking and healing at the same time. Liz pulled her hand away. Then why did he leave? Because he was broken, Preacher said simply. The war broke him, and broken men do not know how to stay. They left the truck stop as afternoon shadows lengthened across the highway. Vincent drove again, pushing through Missouri into Kansas, the landscape flattening out into endless horizons, sky meeting earth in every direction. Beside him, Liz had finally fallen asleep, her head against the window, exhaustion claiming her. In the buggy, Doc mumbled and Preacher prayed, and the miles accumulated like years, one after another, inevitable and relentless. As the sun began to set, painting the Kansas sky in shades of amber and blood, Vincent felt his chest tighten with something that was not the cancer, memory. Fire-based coral, the thing they had all agreed never to speak of. The lie that Jack had told to save Billy Greer. The weight that Jack had carried for 35 years before it finally crushed him. Preacher, Vincent said quietly, not wanting to wake Liz. Tell me about Iraq, about the last time you saw Jack. Preacher set aside his Bible. Walter Reed Medical Center, November 2005, 6 months after Jack died. They brought his body back. I was there when they opened the casket, private viewing for family and close friends. Jack's ex-wife did not come, said she had buried him years ago, did not need to do it again. So it was just me, and you were supposed to be there. I could not, Vincent said, his voice rough. I could not see him like that. Preacher nodded. I understand. But I wish you had, because Jack looked peaceful. For the first time in all the years I knew him, he looked at peace. Like whatever he had been carrying, he had finally put it down. The cancer made a lie of Vincent's next breath, turned it into a cough that rattled his whole body. He pulled the truck onto the shoulder, hands shaking, and coughed until his vision blurred. Preacher reached forward and placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. How long do you have? Preacher asked. Does it matter? Vincent replied when he could speak again. Yes, Preacher said. Because we need to know if you will make it to Arlington. Vincent wiped blood from his lips and pulled back onto the highway. I will make it. I did not drive 2,000 miles to die in Kansas. They drove through the night, trading off drivers every 2 hours, the truck's headlights cutting tunnels through the darkness. At some point, Liz woke and took her turn behind the wheel, silent and focused, her father's determination written in the set of her jaw. Doc woke and slept and woke again, sometimes knowing where he was, sometimes lost in decades past, calling for men who had been dead longer than Liz had been alive. Near the Colorado border, they pulled off at a rest area and built a small fire in one of the designated pits, the kind of fire that travelers have been building since humans first learned to carry flame. They sat around it, 4 people bound by one ghost, warming their hands against the cold November night. Vincent produced a small camp stove from the truck and made coffee in a battered pot that had seen more deployments than most soldiers. The coffee was terrible, burnt and bitter, but nobody complained. They drank it because it was hot and because the ritual of sharing it meant something their words could not capture. Your father and I had a tradition, Vincent said, staring into the flames. Every year on the anniversary of Fire-Based Coral, we would meet somewhere. Did not matter where, just somewhere quiet. We would drink and we would remember. Not just the people who died, all of it. The good and the bad, the things we did right and the things we did wrong. We called it our accounting. Liz wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. What did you talk about? Everything. Nothing. Whether we had done the right thing, whether lying for Greer had been worth it, whether any of it mattered. Your father always said the same thing. He said he would do it again, would take the blame again, because that is what brothers do. They cover for each other. Even when covering means destroying yourself, Liz said. Especially then, Preacher added. That is the test. Whether you are willing to sacrifice yourself for someone else. That is the difference between brothers and friends. Friends stand beside you. Brothers stand in front of you. Doc spoke suddenly, his voice clear and strong, cutting through the night like a flare. I remember Fire-Based Coral. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Funny the things you remember. It was supposed to be a simple strike. Intelligence said there was a Viet Cong command post in the village. High-value targets. Billy Greer ordered artillery. Jack scouted first. Came back on the radio, said negative on strike, said there were civilians, children. I heard the whole thing. I was monitoring comms. Greer said intelligence was solid. Jack said intelligence was wrong. Greer pulled rank, ordered the strike. Jack refused. Direct insubordination. Doc paused, his eyes focused on something in the flames, something only he could see. I heard Billy Greer threaten Jack with court-martial, Doc continued. Heard Jack say he did not care. And then I heard the artillery, 8 rounds, destroyed the village. When we went in after, we found 12 civilians dead. Women, children, and 8 of our own Marines killed in the confusion. Friendly fire, mistakes, chaos. Doc looked up, his eyes meeting Vincent's across the fire. I saw Jack that night. After, he was sitting alone, cleaning his rifle, not speaking, just cleaning. Over and over, same motions. I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me and said, "Do you know what the worst part is, Doc? The worst part is I could have stopped it. I could have shot Greer, put a bullet in him before he called that strike. I had him in my sights. 200 meters, easy shot. But I did not take it, because he was my commanding officer, because I trusted the system. And 12 people died because I trusted the system." The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the darkness where they burned like falling stars. A week later, Doc said, Jack told the investigators he called the strike, said he misidentified targets, said it was his fault. I tried to stop him, told him to tell the truth. He said truth does not matter. What matters is Billy Greer has a wife and 3 kids and I have nobody. He can do more good in the Corps than I can, so I will take the fall. And Greer let him, Liz said, her voice hard. Greer begged him not to, Vincent said. I was there for that conversation. Billy Greer cried actual tears, said he could not let Jack do this. Jack told him, you already did this. The strike happened. People died. Someone has to answer for it. Let it be me. I can carry it. But he could not, Preacher said softly. Nobody can carry that alone. It ate at Jack for 35 years. Every promotion he did not get. Every commendation that was questioned. Every time someone looked at his record and saw Firebase Coral. And through it all, Billy Greer rose. Captain to major, major to colonel, decorated, honored. While Jack was marked as the man who killed 12 civilians and 8 Marines. Why did my father finally break? Liz asked. In Iraq. Why after 35 years did he decide to tell the truth? Because he was dying anyway, Vincent said. Not physically, not yet, but inside. The PTSD, the nightmares, the drinking. Your father knew he was destroying himself, and he decided if he was going down, he was going to go down clean. Tell the truth, clear his name, let Greer face what Greer had done. And Greer had him killed, Liz said. Vincent met her eyes across the fire. I do not know. I know Jack told me 2 weeks before he died that he had confronted Greer. Told Greer he was going to confess. Greer asked for time, asked Jack to wait, to think about it, to consider the consequences. Jack said he was done waiting, done considering, done living with the lie. And then the IED, Preacher said. And then the IED, Vincent confirmed. They sat in silence, watching the fire burn down to coals. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky, the same stars that had watched over Firebase Coral and Fallujah and every battlefield where men had killed and died and tried to make sense of the senseless. My father left me letters, Liz said suddenly, from Iraq before he died. I threw them away. I was 16 and angry, and I wanted him to hurt the way he hurt me. I wanted him to know what it felt like to reach out and find nothing. Doc reached over and patted her hand. He knew you loved him. Even angry love is love. How do you know? Liz asked, tears streaming down her face now, unchecked and unashamed. Because he told me, Doc said, right before his last deployment. I asked him why he kept going back when you had made it clear you did not want him to. He said because maybe if I do enough good over there, Liz will forgive me for all the bad. Maybe if I save enough lives, she will understand why I had to go. He did not have to go, Liz said. He chose to go. No, Preacher said gently. He had to go. Because men like your father do not know how to stop. They are wired different. Combat becomes the only place where they feel real, where they feel useful, where they feel like they matter. And when you take that away, when you bring them home and tell them to be normal, it is like asking them to breathe underwater. They drown in the quiet. Vincent stood, his knees protesting, his lungs burning, and walked to the truck. He returned with a box, old and battered. held together with tape and hope. He set it beside the fire. "Your father gave this to me," Vincent said to Liz, "before his last deployment. Said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you when you were ready." "What is it?" Liz asked. "His letters," Vincent said. "Not the ones he sent you, the ones he wrote but never sent. The ones where he told the truth." Liz opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were dozens of envelopes, each one addressed to her, each one stamped and sealed but never mailed. She pulled one out at random, opened it, and began to read by the firelight. "Dear Liz, today I killed a man. He was maybe 20. Iraqi insurgent, setting up a roadside bomb. I shot him from 800 meters. Perfect shot, center mass. He died instantly. I am telling you this not because I am proud, but because I need someone to know, to witness. You are the only person in the world who matters enough for this confession. I killed a man today, and I am not sorry because that bomb would have killed Marines, maybe killed me, maybe killed someone else's father. But I am not glad either. I just am. And that is the worst part. The numbness. The way it does not bother me anymore. I have become a machine that kills, and I am afraid if I come home, you will see the machine and not the man. I love you, Dad." Liz read another, and another, each one a window into her father's soul, each one showing the man behind the Marine, the fear beneath the courage, the love beneath the absence. She read until the fire burned low and her eyes burned with tears, and she understood, finally, that her father had never stopped reaching out. He had just been reaching from a place too dark for her to see. "We should sleep," Preacher said. "We have a long day tomorrow." They unrolled sleeping bags beside the fire and lay down under the vast Kansas sky. Four people connected by grief and memory, and the ghost of a man who had tried to be good and failed and tried again anyway. Vincent lay awake long after the others had fallen asleep, listening to their breathing, watching the stars, feeling the cancer spread through him like fire through dry grass. He thought about Jack, about all the miles they had covered together in war and in peace, always moving, always running from something or towards something or both. He thought about Firebase Coral and the weight of 127 kills and whether any of it had mattered, whether any of it had made the world better or just different. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote called out, lonely and wild, and Vincent understood exactly how it felt. They woke at dawn to frost on the ground and cold that bit through their sleeping bags like teeth. They made more terrible coffee and ate granola bars that tasted like cardboard and broke camp in silence, each person moving through the motions, preparing for the final push to Arlington. As they loaded the truck, Vincent's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered and immediately wished he had not. "Mr. Castle," a woman's voice said. "This is Lieutenant Morrison from Arlington National Cemetery. I am calling to inform you that Colonel Harrigan's memorial stone has been removed as of 0600 this morning, per regulations regarding dishonorable discharge status. If you have questions, you can contact General Wade's office." The line went dead before Vincent could respond. He stood holding the phone, rage building in his chest like pressure in a boiler, and then he threw the phone against the ground where it shattered into pieces. Preacher picked up the largest piece. "What happened?" "They took it," Vincent said. "Jack's stone. They already took it." Liz's face went white, then red. "We are still 2 days away. They said we had 48 hours. "They lied," Preacher said simply. "Of course they lied. The Army has been lying about Firebase Coral for 54 years. Why stop now?" Vincent walked to the truck, reached into the bed, and pulled back the canvas covering Jack's M40 rifle. He held it, feeling the weight, the balance, the familiar presence of the weapon that had killed 83 men across 3 wars. This rifle had been Jack's most trusted tool, his instrument of precision, his connection to purpose. And now Jack was being erased, his service invalidated, his sacrifice dismissed as though it had never happened. "We keep going," Vincent said, "stone or no stone. We find what Jack buried. We get the truth. And then we burn down everyone who tried to hide it." They drove with new urgency, pushing through Kansas and into Missouri, the truck eating highway like a beast that had caught the scent of blood. Vincent drove beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, fueled by anger and grief and the knowledge that time was running out in more ways than one. His coughing fits came more frequently now, each one leaving him weaker, each one stealing a little more of his remaining strength. Near the Illinois border, Preacher forced him to pull over, forced him to rest while Preacher took the wheel. Vincent sat in the passenger seat and watched America scroll by, small towns and farmland, and the great anonymous middle of the country where people lived their lives without ever thinking about Firebase Coral or Arlington or the cost of protecting men who did not deserve protection. Liz sat back with Doc, reading more of her father's letters, each one a small knife cutting through the scar tissue she had built around her heart. In one letter, Jack wrote about the day she was born, in another about missing her 5th birthday because of the Gulf War, in another about watching her graduate middle school from 8,000 miles away via a video call that kept freezing, his daughter's face pixelated and distant, but still the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "My father was a coward," Liz said suddenly, looking up from the letters. "No," Preacher said from the driver's seat. "Your father was the opposite of a coward. He faced the hardest thing a warrior can face. He came home." "That is not hard," Liz said. "That is easy. Staying is hard." "You do not understand," Preacher said. "For men like your father, for men who have seen what we have seen, coming home is the bravest thing we ever do. Because at war, we know our purpose, we know our enemy, we know our mission. But at home, there is no mission, no enemy, just the quiet and the memories and the knowledge that the person you were before the war is dead, and the person you are now does not fit anywhere." Doc spoke up, his voice distant and dreamy. "I tried to kill myself once. After Vietnam, got as far as putting the gun in my mouth. Sat there for an hour with my finger on the trigger. Could not do it, not because I was afraid to die, because I was afraid I would go to hell and have to face all the men I could not save. They would ask me why I gave up when they never got the choice." The truck filled with heavy silence. Outside, the landscape had changed, farmland giving way to forest, the trees bare and skeletal against the gray November sky. "What stopped you?" Liz asked Doc. "Your father," Doc said. "Jack called me that night. Did not know what I was doing. Just called to check in, asked how I was doing, and I lied. Said I was fine. And he said, 'Doc, I know you are not fine because I am not fine either. Nobody who went through what we went through is fine. But we keep going because the dead need us to remember them. And we cannot remember them if we are dead too.'" "So you kept going," Liz said. "So I kept going," Doc confirmed. "For 40 years I kept going. And now I cannot remember half of what I was supposed to be remembering. The Alzheimer's is taking it all. Soon I will not remember Jack. Will not remember Vietnam. Will not remember my own name. But right now, today, I remember. And that has to be enough." They crossed into Illinois as darkness fell, the truck's headlights illuminating the road ahead in small increments, never showing the destination, only the next few yards, the next mile, the next moment. And they drove on, 4 people carrying one ghost toward a grave that no longer existed, seeking a truth that had been buried for 54 years, racing against time and disease, and a government that wanted nothing more than for all of them to disappear quietly into the past where they belonged. But Vincent Castle had never been good at disappearing, and neither had Jack Harrigan. And whatever waited for them at Arlington, whatever truth Jack had left behind, they would find it. They would dig it up. They would expose it to the light. And then finally, after all these years, Jack could rest. And so could they. They reached Arlington at dawn on the 3rd day, the truck limping into Virginia on fumes and willpower. 4 people who had driven 2,600 miles through the heart of America to reach a grave that no longer existed. The cemetery gates stood closed against the November morning, wrought iron and stone, in the weight of 150 years of American dead, 400,000 souls planted in neat rows beneath white markers that stretched away in every direction like an army frozen in formation. Vincent Castle sat behind the wheel with his hand still gripping it, though the engine had gone silent, staring through the windshield at those gates as if they were the gates of heaven or hell or someplace in between. His chest hurt with every breath now, the cancer spreading like fire through dry timber, eating him alive one cell at a time. He could taste blood at the back of his throat, metallic and wrong, the flavor of his own mortality. Beside him, Liz Harrigan looked small and exhausted, her eyes red from crying and reading, her father's letters scattered across her lap like fallen leaves. She had read every one during the long drive, 247 letters that Jack had written but never sent, confessions and apologies and love letters to a daughter he could never quite reach. Each one had carved away another piece of the wall she had built around her heart, until now she sat raw and open and grieving for a man she had spent 19 years trying to forget. In the back seat, Doc slept the deep sleep of the medicated, the Alzheimer's claiming more ground with every passing hour, stealing his past and his present and leaving him adrift in a present tense that made no sense. Preacher sat beside him, Bible open but unread, staring out at the cemetery with the eyes of a man who had buried too many brothers, who knew these grounds too well, who understood that the dead outnumbered the living and always would. The gates would not open for another 2 hours. They waited. Vincent opened his door and stepped out onto pavement that was slick with morning dew. His legs nearly gave out, muscles that had carried him through jungles and deserts now barely able to support his weight. He steadied himself against the truck and coughed, hard, doubling over with the force of it. Blood spattered the ground at his feet, dark drops against pale concrete. Preacher was there instantly, hand on Vincent's back, solid and warm. "You need a hospital." "I need to finish this," Vincent said when he could speak. "Hospital can wait. Jack cannot." "Jack has been dead 19 years, Preacher said gently. "He can wait a few more hours." "No," Vincent said, straightening despite the pain that lanced through his chest like shrapnel. "He cannot. They took his stone. They are erasing him. If we do not do this now, if we do not find what he left and expose the truth, then Firebase Coral stays buried and Jack dies dishonored and Billy Greer wins. I did not drive 2,000 miles to let that happen." Liz walked over, hugging herself against the cold. "What do we do now? The cemetery is closed. We cannot dig up a grave in broad daylight, even if we knew where it was." "We wait until dark," Vincent said. "Come back tonight. Bring shovels. Find what Jack buried and get out before anyone knows we were here." "That is illegal," Liz said. "Desecrating a grave, federal crime." "Only if we get caught," Preacher said. "And only if there is still a grave to desecrate." They removed the stone. "Officially, Jack is not here anymore." "So we are ghosts visiting a ghost," Liz said. "Exactly," Vincent replied. They drove to a motel 6 miles from the cemetery, a place that rented rooms by the hour and asked no questions. The kind of establishment that existed in the margins where desperate people did desperate things. Vincent paid cash for 2 rooms and they collapsed into them, exhausted beyond sleep, beyond thought, just bodies needing rest before the final push. Vincent lay on a bed that smelled like bleach and disappointment and stared at the water-stained ceiling. His phone, the replacement he had bought after destroying the other one, sat silent on the nightstand. He picked it up and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he needed. His eldest son. They had not spoken in 4 years, not since the funeral of Vincent and his wife, when his son had accused him of loving the Marine Corps more than his own family. Vincent had not defended himself because the accusation was true. He stared at the number for a long time, his thumb hovering over the call button. What would he say? That he was dying, that he was sorry, that he had spent 50 years putting brothers before family, and now he was alone except for ghosts. That if he could do it over, he would choose differently. But that would be a lie. He would make the same choices because that was who he was. A man who defined himself by service and sacrifice, and a code that valued brotherhood above everything else, including love. Vincent set the phone down without calling. Some bridges, once burned, could not be rebuilt. In the other room, Liz sat on the edge of her bed with her father's letters spread around her like evidence at a crime scene. She picked one up at random and read, "Dear Liz, I am writing this from a forward operating base outside Ramadi. It is 120 degrees and everything smells like burning trash and human waste. We lost 2 Marines today, IED. They were both 20 years old, both from small towns where everybody knew everybody. I had to write letters to their families. Had to find words to explain why their sons died 8,000 miles from home in a country most Americans cannot find on a map. I could not find those words. So I wrote the lies we always write. Your son died a hero. Your son did not suffer. Your son's sacrifice mattered. All lies. They died afraid and in pain, and their sacrifice changed nothing because tomorrow there will be another IED and another letter and another lie. I am so tired of lying, Liz. I am tired of pretending any of this matters. The only true thing in my life is you. And I cannot even be honest with you because the truth would destroy you. So I lied to you too. I tell you I am fine. I tell you I will be home soon. I tell you I love you. Only the last part is true. I love you more than I have ever loved anything. And that is why I stay here. Because if I come home, you will see what I have become. and I cannot bear for you to see that. Your father. Liz folded the letter carefully and placed it back in its envelope. She understood now. Understood that her father had not abandoned her but had removed himself like a surgeon removing diseased tissue. He had loved her enough to stay away. And that knowledge hurt worse than the anger she had carried for 19 years, because anger was simple and clean and love was complicated and messy and required forgiveness she did not know if she could give. She picked up her phone and dialed her mother. The call went to voicemail. It always did. Her mother had remarried, moved to Seattle, started a new life that had no room for dead Marines or angry daughters or the wreckage of a marriage that should never have happened. Liz left no message. What would she say? That she finally understood why her father had been unable to stay. That understanding did not make it hurt less. That she wished things had been different, but they were not and never would be. She hung up and lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about graves and ghosts and the weight of truth. Preacher sat in the motel parking lot in one of the plastic chairs that were bolted to the ground to prevent theft. He read his Bible by the yellow light of a sodium vapor lamp, the words familiar and comforting and insufficient. The book of Job, a man tested beyond endurance, stripped of everything, demanding answers from a God who spoke in riddles and thunderstorms. Preacher had always identified with Job, had lost his son, had lost his faith and found it again, and lost it and found it again in an endless cycle of belief and doubt. His phone rang. His wife, ex-wife now. They had divorced 5 years after their son died, the grief too heavy for their marriage to bear. She had remarried. He had found God, or God had found him, or they had found each other in the wreckage. Thomas, she said when he answered, I heard you were in Virginia. Just wanted to make sure you are okay. I am fine, Preacher lied. How did you hear? Your sister called me, said you were on some kind of pilgrimage with that Marine from California, the one with cancer. Vincent, Preacher said. Yes, we are here, at Arlington, for Jack. A long pause. Jack Harrigan has been dead for 19 years, Thomas. Let him rest. That is what we are trying to do, Preacher said. Let him rest. But first we have to tell the truth. The truth about what? About why he died. About Firebase Coral. About all of it. His ex-wife sighed. The sound of someone who had heard this story before, who was tired of the past and its endless demands. The past is past, Thomas. It does not change. Let it go. I cannot, Preacher said simply. Then I feel sorry for you, she replied. You have spent 20 years mourning dead men while the living needed you. Our son needed you. I needed you. But you were always somewhere else, with your ghosts, with your guilt. She hung up. Preacher sat holding the phone, staring at the dark screen, and wondered if she was right. If he had sacrificed the present for the past. If his loyalty to dead brothers had cost him his living family. The answer was yes. Obviously yes. But what was he supposed to do? Forget them. Pretend Firebase Coral never happened. Pretend Jack had not taken the fall for Billy Greer. Pretend that truth did not matter. He could not, would not. The dead deserved their truth spoken, even if the speaking cost him everything. They gathered again as darkness fell. 4 people preparing for what amounted to grave robbery in service of a dead man's confession. Vincent had bought shovels at a hardware store, along with a battery-powered lantern and work gloves, and the kind of determination that comes from knowing you are dying and have nothing left to lose. They loaded everything into the truck and drove back to Arlington as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and blood. The cemetery was closed, gates locked, but Preacher knew a spot where the fence was low and the trees provided cover. They parked a quarter-mile away and walked, Vincent moving slowly, conserving energy, Doc confused but compliant, following where Preacher led. They climbed the fence one by one, Vincent last, nearly falling, Preacher catching him, holding him until he found his footing. They were inside, 4 trespassers in a field of the dead, walking among graves that held generals and privates, heroes and cowards, the honored and the forgotten, all equal now beneath white stones and dark earth. Section 60 was the newest part of Arlington, the place where they buried casualties from Iraq and Afghanistan, young men and women who had died in wars without end or clear purpose, who had served and sacrificed and been mourned, and then mostly forgotten by a country that had moved on. The graves were marked with fresh flowers and small flags, and photographs of faces that would never age beyond 20 or 25 or 30. They found Jack's plot by counting rows and stones, following the coordinates that Vincent had memorized years ago when they placed the memorial. Row 18, stone 47. Except there was no stone now, just a patch of ground, slightly sunken, grass growing over the spot where Jack's marker had stood for 18 years before being removed by order of men who had never known him, never served with him, never understood what he had sacrificed. Vincent knelt beside the empty plot, his knees sinking into soft earth, and placed his hand flat against the ground as if he could feel Jack down there, 2 feet under, waiting. "I am here, brother," Vincent said quietly. "We all are. We came to finish it." Doc stood beside him, lucid for a moment, tears streaming down his face. "Jackie," Doc said. "God, I miss you, Jackie." Preacher bowed his head and prayed, words in Latin that he had learned in seminary. Prayers for the dead, for the living, for the truth to be revealed. Liz stood apart watching these old men mourn a man she had never really known. Her father, who was a stranger, a warrior who had killed 127 people and saved 143 others and never learned how to be a father to one daughter. She felt the weight of his letters in her pocket, the confessions he had written but never sent, the love he had felt but never expressed, the apologies that came too late. "We dig north side of the plot," Vincent said, pulling out the coordinates Jack had left in his final letter. 2 feet down, metal box. They began to dig. Vincent could barely lift the shovel, his strength nearly gone, but he refused help, insisted on doing his share because this was Jack, and Jack deserved that much. Preacher dug with the methodical efficiency of a man who had dug many graves, who understood the mechanics of earth and depth and the respectful displacement of soil. Doc tried to help, but mostly just stood holding his shovel, confused about what they were doing but wanting to contribute. Liz dug with fury, attacking the ground as if it had personally wronged her. Each shovelful of dirt, another piece of anger released, another fragment of grief acknowledged. She dug until her hands blistered and her back screamed, and she hit something solid. "Stop," she said. "I found something." They gathered around as Liz carefully cleared the dirt, revealing a metal case, military grade, waterproof. Exactly what Jack had promised would be here. Vincent pulled it free and held it. This box that contained Jack's truth, Jack's confession, Jack's final words to a world that had stopped listening. They did not open it there. Too exposed, too risky. They reburied the hole, tamped down the earth, scattered leaves to hide their work, and climbed back over the fence carrying Jack's secrets with them. In the motel room, under the harsh fluorescent light that made everyone look like corpses, they opened the box. Inside was a USB drive, Jack's dog tags, a photograph of him holding baby Liz, and 3 letters. One addressed to Liz, one addressed to Billy Greer, and one addressed to the Secretary of Defense. There was also a handwritten note on top that simply said, "Play the video first." Preacher pulled out his laptop and inserted the USB drive. The file was labeled Firebase Coral Final Testimony. He clicked play. Jack's face filled the screen, older than Liz remembered, worn by war and time and guilt. He was in uniform, sitting in what looked like a barracks room, speaking directly to the camera with the flat certainty of a man who had made his peace with death. "My name is Colonel Jack Harrigan, United States Marine Corps. This testimony is being recorded on March 15th, 2005. I am making this statement of my own free will, without coercion, as a matter of conscience and in the interest of truth. On February 14th, 1970, I was serving as a scout sniper with 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, operating in the Central Highlands. Our commanding officer, then Captain William Greer, received intelligence regarding a Viet Cong command post in a village designated Firebase Coral. Captain Greer ordered an artillery strike on that village. I was tasked with forward reconnaissance. I scouted the village and observed civilians present, including women and children. I radioed Captain Greer with this information and recommended against the strike. He overruled my recommendation, citing the intelligence as solid. I refused the order, stating that I would not be party to civilian casualties. Captain Greer threatened me with court-martial for insubordination. I maintained my refusal. Jack paused, his jaw working as if the next words required physical effort to speak. Captain Greer called in the artillery strike himself. 8 rounds, high explosive. The village was destroyed. 12 civilians were killed, In the chaos following the strike, 8 Marines were killed by friendly fire and confusion. When investigators arrived, Captain Greer faced court-martial and dishonorable discharge. He had a wife and 3 children. I had no family. I volunteered to take responsibility. I told investigators that I had called the strike, that I had misidentified targets, that the civilian casualties were my fault. Jack looked directly into the camera, his pale blue eyes burning with intensity. This was a lie. I lied to protect Captain Greer. I lied because that is what brothers do. We protect each other. But I have carried this lie for 35 years, and I cannot carry it anymore. The weight is too much. The dead deserve their truth. The civilians who died deserve their truth. The Marines who died deserve their truth. And I deserve to die clean. Jack reached forward as if to turn off the camera, then stopped. To anyone watching this, I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect absolution. I expect nothing but the record to be corrected. William Greer gave the order that killed 20 people. I covered for him. We are both guilty. But let the record show what really happened. Let the families know their sons and daughters and mothers and fathers did not die because of my mistake. They died because of a command decision made by a man who prioritized intelligence over human life. And they died because I was not brave enough to shoot him before he made that call. The video ended. The room was silent except for the hum of the laptop fan and the sound of Liz crying, quiet tears that fell without sound. Preacher opened the letter addressed to the Secretary of Defense. It was a formal statement, notarized, dated 2 weeks before Jack died, requesting a full investigation into Firebase Coral and the removal of the reprimand from Jack's record. It included copies of radio transcripts, witness statements from other Marines who had been there, and a detailed timeline that proved Jack's version of events. Vincent opened the letter addressed to Billy Greer. It was short, handwritten, the ink slightly faded. Billy, by the time you read this, I will be dead. I do not blame you for Firebase Coral. War is chaos, and you made a decision based on the information you had. But I do blame you for letting me carry it alone for 35 years. I blame you for accepting promotion after promotion while I was marked as the man who killed civilians. I blame you for not having the courage to tell the truth. I am telling it now, not for revenge, for release. I hope you can live with what comes next. I could not, Jack. The letter had been returned to sender, unopened, refused by Billy Greer. Liz opened her letter with shaking hands. It was longer than the others, written on both sides of the paper in Jack's precise script. My dearest Liz, if you are reading this, I have failed you one last time by dying before I could make things right. I am so sorry. Sorry for every missed birthday and graduation and moment that mattered. Sorry for being a ghost in your life instead of a father. Sorry for choosing duty over love and Marines over family. Sorry for being too broken to come home and too proud to admit I was broken. You probably think I died in Iraq because of bad luck or enemy action. The truth is more complicated. 2 weeks ago, I told Billy Greer that I was going to confess about Firebase Coral, that I was done protecting him, done carrying his sin along with my own. He asked me not to, begged me to wait, to think about it. I refused. 3 days later, my convoy was ordered to take a route that intelligence had flagged as compromised. I do not know if Billy arranged that. I do not know if he wanted me dead or just wanted me to reconsider while facing mortality. I will never know, but I am making this video and writing these letters and burying this box because if I die, I want the truth known. But more than that, Liz, I want you to know this. You were the best thing I ever did, the only thing I did that mattered. Every kill I made, I told myself I was making the world safer for you. Every mission I completed, I told myself I was protecting you. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was rationalization. But you were always my reason, my purpose, my one good thing in a life full of bad things. I know I hurt you by leaving, by always leaving. But I left because I loved you too much to let you see what war had made me. I did not want you to see the nightmares, the drinking, the rage, the man who could kill without hesitation and then could not sleep without screaming. I wanted you to remember me as a father who loved you, not as a monster who happened to share your blood. I am asking you to forgive me, not for my sake. I do not deserve forgiveness, but for yours, because carrying anger is like carrying a rifle. It gets heavy, And eventually you have to put it down or it will destroy you. I know, I carried anger for 35 years and it ate me alive. Be better than me, Liz. Do not carry ghosts. Do not sacrifice your present for someone else's past. Live, love, build things instead of destroying them. Make choices I was too weak to make. And if you ever think of me, try to remember not the Marine who left, but the father who loved you more than his own life, even when he could not show it. I will love you forever, even from the grave, even from whatever comes after. You are my one good shot, the one that mattered, the one that saved me even though I could not save myself, Dad. Liz folded the letter carefully and held it against her chest, her body racked with sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal, grief she had been holding for 19 years finally breaking free. Vincent put his arm around her and she collapsed against him, this old warrior who had been her father's brother, and cried until there was nothing left. Outside Arlington slept 400,000 dead dreaming whatever dreams the dead dream. And in a motel room 6 miles away, 4 living people sat with the truth that Jack Harrigan had died trying to tell, the confession he had made, the secrets he had kept, the love he had felt but never properly expressed. What do we do now? Liz asked when she could speak. We release it, Vincent said. All of it. The video, the letters, the documentation. We send it to every news outlet, every congressman, every veteran organization. We burn down the lie and let Jack rest clean. Billy Greer is already dead, Preacher said quietly. Suicide. The news said. 3 days ago, he left a note confessing to Firebase Coral. Vincent went very still. He confessed. Preacher nodded. After 54 years, after letting Jack carry it, after Jack died. Billy finally told the truth. Too late, Liz said, her voice hard. Yes, Preacher agreed. Too late. But truth is truth, even late truth. They sat in silence processing this. Billy Greer had confessed, had killed himself rather than face the consequences. And Jack had never known, had died believing the lie would outlive him, had made this video and written these letters and buried this box not knowing that 3 days before Liz would find it, the man he had protected for 35 years would finally tell the truth. We still release Jack's testimony, Vincent said. The world needs to hear his version, needs to know he was innocent, that he took the fall for someone else, that he died trying to clear his name. The Army will fight it, Liz said. General Wade, the Pentagon, they will say it is classified, that releasing it threatens national security. Then we fight back, Vincent said. We are old. We are dying. What can they do to us that life has not already done? Doc spoke up suddenly, his voice clear and strong. They can erase us, like they erased Jack. Remove our names, invalidate our service, pretend we never existed. The government is good at that, making inconvenient people disappear. Vincent met Doc's eyes and saw the lucidity there. Temporary but real. The old combat medic surfacing one last time. You are right, Doc, they will try. But we have one thing they do not. What? Liz asked. The truth, Vincent said. And once we put it online, once we release it to the world, they cannot take it back. It will spread, it will persist, and Jack will be vindicated. When? Liz asked. Now, Vincent said. Tonight, before they know we have it, before they can stop us. Preacher pulled up his email and began attaching files. The video, the letters, the documentation. He addressed it to the Washington Post, the New York Times, NPR, every veteran advocacy group he could think of, every congressman on the Armed Services Committee. In the subject line, he wrote, The truth about Firebase Coral. He looked at Vincent and Liz. You sure about this? Once we send this, there is no taking it back. I am sure, Vincent said. So am I, Liz added. Doc nodded. For Jack. Preacher hit send. The emails flew out into the digital void, carrying Jack Harrigan's truth, his confession, his love letter to a daughter he had failed, his indictment of a system that valued loyalty over honesty. Within an hour, phones would start ringing, reporters would start calling, the Pentagon would start scrambling, and the lie that had been maintained for 54 years would begin to crumble. But that would come later. For now, in a cheap motel room in Virginia, 4 people sat together in the aftermath of truth-telling, exhausted and relieved and terrified of what they had just set in motion. Vincent's phone rang first. Unknown number, he answered. Mr. Castle, General Wade's voice tight with rage. What have you done? The right thing, Vincent said. Finally, you have released classified materials, violated the Espionage Act. I will have you arrested. You do that, General. Arrest a dying man for telling the truth about a 54-year-old war crime. I am sure that will play great in the media. The line went dead. Liz's phone rang next. Her mother. Liz answered on speaker. Elizabeth, what the hell have you done? I have reporters calling me, asking about your father, about some village. What is this about? It is about Dad telling the truth, Liz said. About him being innocent. About him dying to protect that truth. Your father was not innocent, her mother said. He was a killer. He destroyed our family. And now you are destroying what little peace I have managed to find. Then I am sorry, Liz said. But Dad deserves to have his name cleared. And if that makes you uncomfortable, I do not care anymore. She hung up. The phones kept ringing. Preachers, Vincent's, even Doc's, though he did not answer it, just stared at it ringing, confused about what a phone was and why it was making noise. By midnight, the story was breaking. By 1 a.m., it was the lead story on 3 major news sites. By 2 a.m., the Pentagon had released a statement saying they were reviewing the allegations. By 3 a.m., 6 senators had called for a full investigation. And in that motel room, Vincent Castle felt something he had not felt in 54 years. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting, not the peace of absolution, but the peace that comes from finally putting down a weight you have carried so long, you forgot what it felt like to stand upright. Jack, Vincent said to the empty room, to the ghost that had ridden with him for 2,000 miles, to the brother who had been closer than blood. It is done. You can rest now. And somewhere in whatever place the dead go, Jack Harrigan smiled. The media storm hit like artillery fire, sudden and devastating, and impossible to avoid. By dawn, reporters had found the motel, cameras and microphones forming a gauntlet outside the doors. Questions shouted like accusations through the thin walls. Vincent Castle watched them through the window blinds, these young journalists who had never seen combat, never carried a rifle, never understood that some truths cost everything to tell. They wanted sound bites and drama, and a story that would trend on social media for 48 hours before being forgotten. They did not understand that this was about 4 old warriors trying to honor a dead brother's last request. We need to leave, Preacher said, packing his Bible and the few belongings he had brought. They will not let us rest here. Not now. Where do we go? Liz asked. She looked exhausted, eyes red from crying and lack of sleep, her father's letters still clutched in her hands like sacred texts. Somewhere quiet, Vincent said. Somewhere we can think. They left through the back exit, avoiding the cameras, piling into Vincent's truck as reporters shouted questions they would not answer. Vincent drove with deliberate care, each movement requiring concentration as the cancer ate away at his remaining strength. His hands shook on the wheel, his vision blurred at the edges. He could taste blood constantly now, metallic and wrong, the flavor of his body betraying itself. They drove north into Maryland, into farmland that looked like every other piece of American farmland, anonymous and peaceful. Preacher knew a place, a small church outside Frederick where the pastor was a veteran, a man who understood that sometimes warriors needed sanctuary. They arrived at noon, the white-clapboard church sitting alone on a hill like a lighthouse on a lonely shore. Pastor David Michaels met them at the door. He was 70, with white hair and the calm eyes of someone who had made peace with mortality. He had served in the First Gulf War as a chaplain, had seen enough death to understand that the living often needed more help than the dead. He asked no questions, simply opened his doors and his spare rooms and his kitchen, offering what all good pastors offer to the weary, which is shelter and silence and the space to breathe. They ate soup and bread at a wooden table in the church basement, 4 people who had driven through the heart of America to dig up a buried truth and now did not know what to do with it. Outside, the November wind rattled bare branches against windows. Inside, the quiet was almost oppressive, the absence of noise making everything else too loud, breathing and heartbeats and the creak of old joints. My phone has not stopped ringing, Liz said, staring at the device on the table like it was a bomb. News outlets, podcasters, documentary filmmakers. Everyone wants the story. Everyone wants me to go on camera and talk about my father. Will you? Preacher asked. I do not know, Liz said. Part of me wants to shout it from every rooftop. My father was innocent, My father was a hero. My father died trying to tell the truth. But another part of me just wants this to be over. I want to mourn him in private. I want to read his letters and cry and then put them away and try to live my life without this weight. Vincent coughed, hard, his whole body convulsing. Blood spotted the napkin he held to his mouth. When the fit passed, he looked at Liz with eyes that had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Your father would want you to choose yourself, Vincent said. Not him, not his legacy. You. If going on camera helps you heal, do it. If silence helps you heal, choose silence. But do not carry his burden out of guilt. He carried enough for both of you. The afternoon passed slowly, time measured in the movement of shadows across the floor and the distant sound of church bells marking hours. Doc slept in one of the spare rooms, his snoring rhythmic and peaceful, the Alzheimer's giving him at least the mercy of unconsciousness. Preacher sat in the chapel, praying or thinking or both, his lips moving silently as he worked through whatever conversation he was having with God or himself or the ghosts he carried. Vincent walked outside despite the cold, needing air, needing space, needing to feel something other than the cancer eating him alive. He stood in the church cemetery, a small plot where 20 headstones marked the final resting places of parishioners who had lived and died in this quiet corner of Maryland. Simple stones, simple names, lives lived without war or headlines or the weight of 127 kills. He thought about Jack, about the promise they had made to each other in Vietnam, young and stupid and certain they were immortal. If I die, make sure they know I was not a coward. Make sure they know I served with honor. Vincent had kept that promise, had spent 3 days driving across America, had dug up Jack's confession, had released it to a world that probably would not care in a month. But he had kept his word, and that mattered. That was all that mattered. His phone rang. His youngest son, the one who had not spoken to him in 4 years. Vincent stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Dad, his son's voice, uncertain and small. I saw the news. About Colonel Harrigan. About what you did. Vincent said nothing, waiting. I wanted to call and say, his son paused. I wanted to say I understand now. Why you were the way you were. Why the Marines always came first. I did not get it before. But watching that video of Colonel Harrigan, hearing him talk about protecting his men, about carrying that weight, I get it now. Do you? Vincent asked quietly. No, his son admitted. Not really, but I am trying to, and I wanted you to know that I am proud of you for doing this, for honoring your friend, for telling the truth even though it cost you. Vincent felt something crack in his chest, not the cancer, but something deeper, the wall he had built around his heart to survive 50 years of war and loss, and the kind of loneliness that comes from choosing duty over love. I am dying, Vincent said. Cancer, stage 4. Maybe a month left, maybe less. Silence on the line, then his son's voice breaking. Why did you not tell me? Because I did not want pity, Vincent said. I wanted to finish this. For Jack. And now it is finished. Can I come see you? His son asked. Before the end. Vincent looked at the cemetery, at the simple stones marking simple lives, and thought about all the years he had wasted, all the moments he had sacrificed for men who were dead, while his living family waited for a father who never came home, even when he was standing in the same room. Yes, Vincent said, come. There are things I need to say, apologies I need to make, time I need to give you that I should have given long ago. They talked for another 20 minutes, awkward and halting. Two people trying to cross a distance that had nothing to do with miles. When Vincent hung up, he felt lighter somehow, as if speaking truth to his son had lifted weight the same way releasing Jack's confession had. Maybe that was what truth did. Maybe it did not solve anything or fix anything or make anything better. Maybe it just made the weight bearable. He went back inside to find Liz sitting at the table with her laptop open, watching her father's video testimony for the third time. Jack's face filled the screen, older and worn but still recognizable. Still her father despite the decades and the distance. I keep thinking I will see something different, Liz said without looking away from the screen. Some clue I missed. Some explanation that makes it all make sense. It will never make sense, Vincent said, sitting down across from her. War does not make sense. Sacrifice does not make sense. Your father taking the fall for Billy Greer does not make sense. But he did it anyway. Because sense is not the point. Honor is the point. Brotherhood is the point. The code is the point. The code got him killed, Liz said. Maybe, Vincent allowed. Or maybe the code kept him alive 35 years longer than he should have lived. Maybe without it, without that sense of purpose and duty, he would have eaten his gun after Vietnam like so many others did. The code is not perfect, Liz. It is not even good sometimes. But it is what we have. It is what keeps us going when everything else fails. Preacher joined them, carrying Doc, who was awake but confused, asking where he was and why the church looked different from the one he remembered from childhood. They settled him in a chair with coffee, and he seemed content, staring out the window at bare trees and gray sky. The Pentagon released a statement, Preacher said, showing them his phone. They are opening a full investigation into Firebase Coral, promising transparency and accountability, promising to restore Colonel Harrigan's honorable discharge status and reinstate his memorial stone at Arlington. Vincent snorted. Promises, they are good at promises, less good at keeping them. But it is something, Liz said. It is acknowledgement. It is the beginning of justice. Justice would be Billy Greer facing court-martial, Vincent said. Justice would be the officers who covered this up for 54 years, losing their pensions and their medals. Justice would be the system that allowed this to happen, being burned to the ground and rebuilt. What we are getting is not justice. It is damage control. Then what was the point, Liz asked, her voice rising. What was the point of all this? The drive, the digging, the releasing of the video, if nothing really changes. The point is, your father's name gets cleared, Vincent said. The point is, the truth gets told. The point is, we kept our promise. That is all we can do, Liz. Tell the truth and trust that it matters even when the evidence suggests otherwise. That night, they ate dinner around the wooden table. 5 people, now including Pastor Michaels, who joined them and said grace over chicken and potatoes in the simple comfort of food shared in community. Doc ate mechanically, not really tasting anything, his mind somewhere else, perhaps Vietnam, perhaps childhood, perhaps nowhere at all. Preacher ate in silence, still processing his ex-wife's words, still wondering if he had sacrificed too much for the dead and not enough for the living. Vincent barely ate, his appetite gone, his body beginning the final shutdown. He pushed food around his plate and drank water and thought about the weeks ahead, the slow decline, the increasing pain, the moment when breathing would stop and everything would stop and he would find out if there was anything after or just darkness and silence. Liz picked at her food and watched these old men, these warriors who had given everything for a code she did not fully understand, a brotherhood that excluded her not out of malice but out of the simple fact that she had not been there, had not seen what they had seen, had not carried what they had carried. She felt like an outsider observing a ritual she could acknowledge but not participate in. After dinner, Pastor Michaels invited them to evening prayer in the chapel. It was a small service, just the 5 of them and a few elderly parishioners who came every evening, regardless of weather or circumstance. They sang old hymns. They listened to scripture. They prayed for the dead and the living in the broken world that needed both. When Pastor Michaels asked if anyone had prayer requests, Vincent stood, his legs shaking, his voice rough. I want to pray for Jack Harrigan, Vincent said, for my brother who died trying to tell the truth, for the 127 men we killed together, for the 12 civilians who died at Firebase Coral, for the 8 Marines who died in the confusion after, for Billy Greer who carried guilt until it killed him, for all of us who went to war and came back broken, for the families we failed, for the children we did not raise, for the wives we drove away, for the weight we carry and cannot put down. His voice cracked. He sat down heavily, suddenly overcome. Preacher stood in and placed a hand on Vincent's shoulder. Lord, we pray for your mercy, not because we deserve it, we do not, but because we need it. We pray for rest for the dead. We pray for peace for the living. We pray for truth to matter even when it costs everything. We pray for forgiveness we cannot give ourselves. Amen. Amen, the small congregation echoed. Liz found herself crying again, not the racking sobs from before, but quiet tears that fell without sound. She cried for her father who had tried and failed and tried again. She cried for Vincent, who was dying, and for Doc, who was forgetting, and for Preacher, who had lost his son and his wife and his faith and found it again, only to lose it again. She cried for the impossibility of healing, for the way trauma became inheritance, for the children of warriors who grew up in the shadow of wars they never fought. After the service, they sat in the chapel as the other parishioners filed out, 5 people in silence, the candles flickering and the darkness pressing against the windows. Pastor Michael sat with them, not speaking, just being present the way good pastors do. Finally, Doc spoke, his voice clear and strong and utterly lucid. "I am going to forget all of this," Doc said. "In a month, maybe less, I will not remember Jack, will not remember this trip, will not remember any of you. The Alzheimer's is taking everything. But right now, this moment, I remember. I remember Jack at 19, scared and brave, and trying so hard to be good in a place where good did not exist. I remember him saving my life. I remember him crying over civilians he could not save. I remember him calling me from Iraq, drunk and broken, saying he could not do it anymore, could not carry the lie, could not pretend, and I told him to tell the truth. I told him it would set him free. And then he died." Doc looked at each of them in turn. "I have carried that guilt for 19 years, wondering if my advice got him killed, if telling him to confess was the same as pulling the trigger. But tonight, listening to Vincent pray, I realized something. Jack died free. He died having told the truth. He died clean. And that mattered to him more than living dirty. So maybe my advice did not kill him. Maybe it saved him in the only way he could be saved." No one knew what to say to that, so they said nothing, just sat together in the candlelight, holding space for grief and guilt and the small moments of grace that sometimes come when truth is told. The next morning brought news that changed everything. General Arthur Wade had been relieved of command pending investigation. 3 colonels and 2 majors had been placed on administrative leave. The Secretary of Defense had ordered a full review of all cases where soldiers had been discharged under questionable circumstances during and after the Vietnam War. And Congress had announced hearings on military cover-ups and accountability. The machine was moving, slowly, bureaucratically, but moving. Vincent's phone rang again, a number he recognized. The Marine Corps Commandant's office. He answered. "Mr. Castle," a crisp voice said, "the Commandant would like to meet with you, and with Miss Harrigan, to discuss Colonel Harrigan's service and the restoration of his honor." "When?" Vincent asked. "Tomorrow, if you can make it to Washington." Vincent looked at Liz. She nodded. "We will be there," Vincent said. They drove to Washington in the morning. Vincent insisted on driving despite Preacher's concerns, despite the way his hands shook and his breathing labored. This was his truck, his mission, his final act of service to Jack. He would see it through. The Commandant's office was in the Pentagon, that massive monument to American military power. 5 sides and 5 rings in endless corridors where decisions were made that sent young men and women to die in distant lands. They were escorted through security and down long hallways and finally into an office that was surprisingly modest, a desk and chairs and an American flag and a few photographs of Marines in combat. General Marcus Stone stood when they entered. He was 76 years old, white-haired and straight-backed despite his age, wearing his dress blues with 4 stars on his shoulders and enough ribbons to tell the story of a life spent in service. He had known Jack, had served with him briefly in the Gulf War, had written one of the letters recommending Jack's promotion, a promotion that never came because of fire-based coral. "Miss Harrigan," General Stone said, shaking Liz's hand. "Mr. Castle, Sergeant Yates, Dr. Coe, thank you for coming." They sat. General Stone remained standing. "I will not waste your time with apologies," the general said. "Apologies mean nothing. What was done to Colonel Harrigan was wrong. The cover-up of fire-based coral was wrong. The decision to dishonorably discharge him for threatening to expose that cover-up was wrong. And the removal of his memorial stone was wrong. These are facts, not opinions." He paused, his jaw tight. "I have recommended to the Secretary of Defense that Colonel Harrigan's discharge be changed to honorable, that his memorial stone be restored with full honors, that he be posthumously awarded the Navy Cross for his service and sacrifice, and that a formal apology be issued to his family and to all Marines whose careers were destroyed by speaking truth to power." Liz's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, General." "Do not thank me," General Stone said. "This is not a gift. This is what should have been done 54 years ago. I am ashamed it took this long. I am ashamed that it took a dying man and a grieving daughter and the public release of a video that never should have been necessary to force us to do the right thing." He sat down, suddenly looking every one of his 76 years. Your father was one of the finest Marines I ever knew, the general said to Liz, and the Corps failed him. We failed him. I failed him. I knew something was wrong with Firebase Coral. Knew Jack was carrying weight he should not have to carry alone. And I did nothing. I chose my career over his honor. I chose silence over justice. And I have to live with that. What happens now? Vincent asked. Now we rebuild, General Stone said. We review every case where soldiers were punished for whistleblowing. We create new protections. We try to make sure this never happens again. Though it will. Because institutions protect themselves. Always have. Always will. But maybe we make it a little harder next time. Maybe we honor the truth tellers instead of destroying them. And my father's memorial, Liz asked, will be restored within the week, the general said. New stone, new inscription, and if you allow it, a ceremony. Full military honors. The commandant himself will speak. We will do this right, Liz. Finally, too late, but right. They left the Pentagon in silence, walking out into November sunshine that felt too bright, too normal for the weight of what had just happened. They stood on the steps looking out at the Potomac River, at the monuments to Jefferson and Lincoln and the other dead men who had shaped this country. Jack would have hated this, Vincent said. The ceremony, the honors, the speeches. He would have wanted to be buried quietly with no fuss. But he does not get that choice, Liz said. Because he is dead, and the living need the ceremony, need the closure, need to see justice even if it is late. Vincent nodded. You sound like your father. Good, Liz said. Maybe I am finally becoming his daughter. Not the daughter he left. The daughter he would have wanted me to be. Strong enough to carry his truth without being crushed by it. They drove back to the church in Maryland as the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of red and gold and the purple of old bruises. Vincent's breathing was worse now, each breath a struggle, his body giving up one system at a time. But he drove on, stubborn and determined, refusing to surrender until the mission was complete. That night, Pastor Michael sat with Vincent in the church cemetery, two old men looking at headstones and talking about death, the way young men talk about women or old men talk about regret. Are you afraid, the pastor asked? Of dying, Vincent said. No, I have been dying since Vietnam. This is just the paperwork catching up. But I am afraid of what comes after. Heaven or hell, the pastor asked. Judgment, Vincent said. Standing before whatever God exists and having to account for 127 kills. Trying to explain why they were necessary, why they mattered, why I do not regret them, even though I carry every face. Do you believe in God? Pastor Michaels asked. I believe in something, Vincent said. I have seen too much to believe in nothing. Men do not die the way they if there is nothing after. The light goes out too specifically, too finally. There has to be somewhere it goes. What will you say? The pastor asked. When you stand before God, the truth, Vincent said, that I tried to be good, that I failed more than I succeeded, that I loved my brothers more than my family, that I kept my promises even when keeping them cost everything, that I would do it all again, and that I am sorry for what that says about me. The pastor smiled. I think God will understand. I think soldiers get grace that the rest of us do not, because you carry weight we cannot imagine. Maybe, Vincent said, or maybe we just tell ourselves that so we can sleep at night. They sat in silence, watching stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Tomorrow they would return to Arlington. Tomorrow there would be a ceremony. Tomorrow Jack's name would be restored and his honor vindicated and his sacrifice acknowledged. Tomorrow the living would try to make peace with the dead. But tonight, Vincent Castle sat in a small cemetery in Maryland and thought about Jack Harrigan and Firebase Coral and the 127 faces he carried and the son who had called to say he understood and the weight that never got lighter but somehow became bearable when you shared it with people who understood. Tonight was enough. Tomorrow could wait. The memorial stone arrived at Arlington on a Tuesday morning in late November, delivered by men in dress blues who handled it with the reverence reserved for the honored dead. It was larger than the original, black granite polished to a mirror shine, with Jack Harrigan's name carved deep enough to last 1,000 years. The inscription read simply, Colonel Jack Harrigan, United States Marine Corps, 1950 to 2005. Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, 127 confirmed kills, 143 confirmed saves. And beneath that, in smaller letters, he died telling truth. Vincent Castle watched them set it in place. Row 18, stone 47, Section 60, the same plot where they had dug in darkness just a week ago. He stood at a distance, not wanting to interfere, his body so weak now that standing required all his remaining strength. The cancer had accelerated in the past few days, as if his body had been waiting for this moment, holding on just long enough to see Jack honored, and now could finally let go. Beside him, Liz Harrigan stood with her father's letters pressed against her chest like armor. She had read them all again last night, every single one, 247 confessions and apologies and declarations of love from a man who had never learned how to say those things while he was alive. She had memorized whole passages, had learned her father through his own words, not the Marine Corps version or her mother's bitter version or the stranger who had haunted her childhood. But the real man, complicated and broken and trying so hard to be good despite everything war had made him. Preacher stood with them, Bible in hand as always, his faith worn smooth by use like river stones. He had spent the morning praying for Jack and for Vincent and for all the brothers who had gone ahead into whatever waited after this life. His ex-wife had called again, asking him to come home, to stop chasing ghosts, to live what remained of his life among the living instead of the dead. He had told her he would, after this, after he saw Jack properly honored, after he kept this last promise. Then he would go home and try to rebuild what could be rebuilt and mourn what could not. Doc sat in a wheelchair that Preacher had rented, confused about where he was but calm, humming a tune that might have been from his childhood or might have been something he had invented in the moment. The Alzheimer's had progressed rapidly in the past week, the stress and travel accelerating the disease's consumption of his mind. He would need full-time care soon, a facility, strangers feeding him and changing him and talking to him like a child. The indignity of it made Vincent's heart ache, but there was no alternative. Doc's daughter was arranging everything. Today was probably the last day Doc would be lucid enough to understand why they were here. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Full military honors. The commandant would speak. General Stone would present Liz with Jack's Navy Cross. There would be a 21-gun salute and taps played on a bugle that had been played at Arlington for 60 years. The media would be there, cameras and reporters documenting the redemption of a fallen Marine, the vindication of a man who had died trying to tell truth to power. But that was hours away. For now, in the quiet morning before the crowds arrived, it was just 4 people and a stone, and the memory of a man who had been better than his country deserved. Vincent walked slowly to the grave, his legs barely supporting him, and knelt beside the new stone. He placed his hand flat against the cold granite, feeling the carved letters under his palm. "We did it, brother," Vincent said quietly. "Your name is cleared, your honor restored, the truth told. You can rest now." The wind moved through the trees, bare branches clicking together like old bones. Above, clouds gathered, promising rain or snow, the November sky uncertain about which kind of grief to deliver. Liz came and knelt beside Vincent. She pulled out a photograph, the one from her father's letters. Jack holding her as an infant, both of them caught in a moment of perfect joy before war and distance and all the things left unsaid had driven them apart. She placed it on the grave, weighted down with a smooth stone she had carried from the church in Maryland. "I forgive you, Dad," Liz said, her voice breaking. "I forgive you for leaving, for choosing the Marines, for dying before we could fix this. I forgive you because you were doing the best you could with what you had. And because I understand now that love does not always look the way we want it to. Sometimes it looks like letters never sent. Sometimes it looks like staying away to protect someone. Sometimes it looks like dying to tell the truth." She touched the stone, her fingers tracing her father's name. "I am going to live my life, Dad," Liz continued. "Not the life you wanted for me. Not the life Mom wanted. My life. I am going to build things and love people and make mistakes and forgive myself for them. I am going to be whole in a way you never got to be. And I am going to remember you not as the Marine or the sniper or the man who killed 127 people, but as my father who loved me the only way he knew how." Preacher joined them, placing his hand on Liz's shoulder. He opened his Bible and read from Ecclesiastes, the passage about there being a time for everything, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. His voice was steady and sure. the words landing like stones dropped into still water, sending ripples outward into the silence. When he finished, Doc spoke, his voice surprisingly clear. "I remember Jack telling me once that every man dies twice," Doc said. "Once when he stops breathing, and once when his name is spoken for the last time. Jack died the first time 19 years ago. But his name will be spoken for generations now, in classrooms and books and conversations about honor and truth. He will not die the second death. None of our brothers will, as long as we remember them, as long as we speak their name." They stood together in silence, 4 people bound by one ghost, until the first cars began to arrive, bringing officials and dignitaries in the machinery of official mourning. By 2 o'clock, Section 60 was filled with people. Marines in dress blues stood at attention in perfect rows. Veterans from 3 wars gathered in wheelchairs and on walkers and with canes, old men who had known Jack, or known men like Jack, who understood what it meant to carry the weight and the cost and the impossible burden of being a warrior in a world that asked everything and gave nothing back. News cameras lined the perimeter, recording everything, turning private grief into public spectacle. Liz hated them but understood they were necessary. This was not just about Jack anymore. This was about every soldier who had been punished for telling truth, every whistleblower destroyed by the system they had served, every person who had chosen conscience over career and paid the price. The commandant spoke first, a tall man with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent 40 years learning how to lead. He spoke about Jack's service, his sacrifice, his courage in the face of a system that had failed him. He spoke about the reforms being implemented, the new protections for whistleblowers, the commitment to transparency and accountability. He spoke well, the words carefully chosen and delivered with practiced sincerity. But Vincent barely heard him. He was focused on staying upright, on breathing, on lasting just a few more hours. The pain was constant now, a living thing that had taken up residence in his chest and was eating him from the inside out. He had refused morphine, wanting to be present for this, wanting to honor Jack with clear eyes and full awareness, but the cost was nearly unbearable. General Stone spoke next, his voice rough with emotion that was not practiced or political, but real. He talked about knowing Jack, about serving with him, about the moment he realized what the Corps had done to this good man and his own failure to speak up. He talked about the weight of command, about the impossible choices between loyalty up the chain and justice down the ranks. He talked about being ashamed and angry and determined to make sure this never happened again, even though he knew it would because institutions protected themselves and always had and always would. Then General Stone called Liz forward and presented her with Jack's Navy Cross, the medal in its blue case, the ribbon, red, white, and blue, the citation reading, for extraordinary heroism in the face of institutional injustice, for maintaining integrity when silence would have been easier, for choosing truth over career, for serving with honor even when honor was not returned. Liz accepted the medal with shaking hands. She looked out at the assembled crowd, at the cameras, at the faces of strangers who had come to mourn a man they had never known. "My father was not a hero," Liz said, her voice carrying across the cemetery. "He was a man, a complicated, broken, struggling man who tried to do good in impossible circumstances. He killed people, 127 people, and he carried every single one. He saved people, 143 people, and he never mentioned it. He lied to protect a friend, and it destroyed him. He told the truth to clear his name, and it killed him." She paused, tears streaming down her face. He was not perfect. He was not even good by some measures. But he was honest. In the end, when it mattered most, he was honest. And in a world where institutions lie and systems cover up and power protects itself, honesty is the most heroic thing we have. So I accept this medal not because my father was a hero, but because he was honest. And because honesty deserves to be honored even when it costs everything. The crowd was silent. Even the reporters had stopped rustling. "And I want to say to anyone watching this who is thinking about telling truth to power," Liz continued, "do it. Tell the truth. Expose the lies. Face the consequences. Because my father died free. He died clean. He died honest. And that matters more than any medal or rank or career. Truth matters, always, even when no one wants to hear it." She stepped back. The bugler played taps, the mournful notes floating across Arlington like a prayer for all the dead who lay beneath these hills. The honor guard fired their 21-gun salute, the shots sharp and clean in the cold air. Marines folded an American flag with precise movements and presented it to Liz, who clutched it against her chest and wept. And somewhere, perhaps, Jack Harrigan heard and understood that his truth had been told. His name cleared. His daughter finally at peace with the father she had lost long before he died. After the ceremony, after the officials left and the cameras packed up and the crowd dispersed, Vincent stood alone at Jack's grave. The pain in his chest was overwhelming now, each breath a battle he was losing. He knew he did not have much time. Days maybe, hours possibly. His body was shutting down, systems failing one by one, the cancer claiming its final victory. He pulled out Jack's M40 rifle from where he had hidden it in the truck. The weapon that had killed 83 men across 3 wars. The weapon Jack had carried and cleaned and trusted with his life. Vincent had planned to leave it at the grave, a final offering, but now holding it, he realized that was wrong. Jack would not want the rifle here, he would want it used, would want it to serve. Vincent made a decision. He would give the rifle to Liz. Let her decide what to do with it. Maybe she would donate it to a museum. Maybe she would keep it. Maybe she would destroy it. But it was hers now, her inheritance, her choice. He walked back to where Liz stood with Preacher and Doc, the 3 of them watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold and the deep purple of old bruises. "This is for you," Vincent said, offering Liz the rifle. "Your father's. He would want you to have it." Liz took it carefully, feeling the weight, the balance, the worn places where her father's hands had gripped it 10,000 times. It was heavier than she expected, not just the physical weight, but the weight of history, of 127 kills, of all the moments when her father had looked through the scope and made the choice to end a life. "What should I do with it?" Liz asked. "Whatever you want," Vincent said. "It is yours, your burden or your treasure, your choice." That night, they stayed in a hotel near Arlington, too exhausted to drive back to Maryland. Vincent's son arrived from Pennsylvania, a man in his 40s who looked like Vincent had looked 30 years ago, before cancer and time had worn him down to bone and will. They sat together in Vincent's room, father and son, and talked in the way men talk when they know time is short and things need to be said. "I am sorry," Vincent said, "for not being there, for choosing the Marines over you, for being a better brother than a father." His son shook his head. "You did what you thought was right. I did not understand it then. I am not sure I understand it now, but I am trying. And I wanted you to know that I love you. Even when I was angry, even when I cut you off, I always loved you." Vincent felt something break in his chest, not the cancer, but something deeper. The wall he had built around his heart finally crumbling. He pulled his son into an embrace and held him and cried the way he had not cried since Vietnam, since the night after Firebase Coral, when he had held Jack while Jack wept for the civilians they could not save. "Take care of your brother," Vincent said, "when I am gone, and take care of yourself. Do not make my mistakes. Do not choose ghosts over the living." His son nodded, unable to speak through his own tears. They sat together until late into the night, trading stories and memories, building in hours what they should have built over decades. And when Vincent finally slept, he slept peacefully for the first time in 50 years. The nightmares temporarily held at bay by the presence of his son and the knowledge that he had kept his promise to Jack. 3 days later, Vincent woke unable to breathe. His lungs had filled with fluid, the cancer spreading so fast now that each hour brought new failures. Preacher called an ambulance, but Vincent refused to go. "No hospitals?" Vincent said, his voice barely a whisper. "I die here, with my brothers." They made him comfortable in the hotel bed, pillows propped behind him, morphine drip finally accepted, the pain receding into a distant throb. Liz sat on one side of the bed, his son on the other. Preacher stood at the foot, reading scripture. Doc sat in a chair by the window, staring out at Arlington visible in the distance, humming that same tune lost in his own fading mind. Vincent looked at each of them in turn, these people who had become his family in the final days, who had driven with him across America to honor a dead brother, who had dug up truth and scattered it like seeds. "Tell me about Jack," Vincent said. "One more time." And they did. Liz read from her father's letters. Preacher told stories about Fallujah. Doc, in a moment of startling clarity, described the first time he met Jack in Vietnam, a 19-year-old sniper with the saddest eyes he had ever seen. Vincent's son talked about the one time he had met Jack when he was 10 years old and Jack had taught him how to shoot a rifle, how to breathe and squeeze and trust the weapon. The stories wove together into a portrait of a man who had been more than his kills, more than his service, more than his sacrifice. A man who had loved and failed and tried again. A man who had carried impossible weight with grace, even when that grace was invisible to everyone, including himself. As the sun set on the fourth day after the ceremony, as the morphine pulled Vincent down into darkness that felt like peace, he spoke his last words. "I am coming, Jackie. Save me a seat." And then Vincent Castle, who had killed 127 men alongside his brother, who had carried those faces for 56 years, who had driven 2,000 miles to restore Jack's honor, died as warriors hope to die, surrounded by people who loved him, having kept his promises, having told his truth. They buried Vincent 3 days later, not at Arlington but in Pennsylvania, in the small cemetery where his wife lay, where his parents lay, where the graves were marked with simple stones and the names of ordinary people who had lived ordinary lives. His son spoke, preacher eulogized, Marines came in dress blues and rendered honors. And Liz stood at the graveside holding her father's rifle and understood finally what Vincent had been trying to teach her. That warriors do not die once. They die every time they are forgotten. And the only way to honor them is to remember them whole, not as heroes or villains, but as human beings who did impossible things in impossible circumstances and carried the weight so others would not have to. 6 months after Vincent's death, Liz opened a Veterans Support Center in her father's name, the Jack Harrigan Center for Military Truth and Healing. It offered free counseling for veterans struggling with PTSD, legal support for whistleblowers, and workshops on processing trauma through marksmanship, using the discipline of shooting to teach breathing and focus and the kind of meditation that comes from perfect stillness. She used Vincent's rifle for the program, letting veterans hold it, feel it, understand that weapons could be tools of healing as well as destruction. She told them stories about her father and Vincent and the 127 faces they carried and the 143 lives they saved and the price they paid for serving a country that too often forgot to honor those who honored it most. Preacher returned to his church in Atlanta, but something had changed in him. He preached less about doctrine and more about grace, less about rules and more about mercy. He reached out to his ex-wife, not to reconcile romantically, but to apologize, to acknowledge that she had been right, that he had sacrificed the living for the dead, and to ask forgiveness. She gave it. They became friends again, not what they had been, but something new, something built on honesty rather than expectation. Doc lasted another year before the Alzheimer's took him completely. He spent his final months in a care facility, sometimes lucid, mostly lost, but on his good days he would talk about Jack and Vincent and the trip they had taken to Arlington. His daughter recorded these stories, compiled them into a memoir that was published posthumously. The book sold modestly but reached the people who needed it, other veterans and military families who understood that memory was the only immortality we get. And on the anniversary of Jack's death, every year, Liz returned to Arlington. She would stand at Section 60, Row 18, Stone 47, and read aloud from her father's letters. Sometimes other people would gather, drawn by the public nature of Jack's story, wanting to pay respects to a man who had died telling truth. Sometimes Liz would be alone, with just the wind and the graves and the ghosts of all the warriors who lay beneath these hills. She would read the letters, and then she would place fresh flowers on the grave, and she would speak to her father the way she had never been able to speak to him in life. "I am doing okay, Dad. I am building things. I am helping people. I am living the life you wanted for me, even though you never said it out loud. I carry your rifle, but I do not carry your weight. I remember you, but I am not haunted by you. I forgive you, but I do not forget. And I love you in a way that makes sense now, a way that acknowledges who you were and what you did and why it cost you everything." The wind would move through the trees, the stones would stand silent, and Liz would walk away, lighter somehow, the annual ritual of remembrance, allowing her to honor her father without being consumed by him. Years passed, the story of Firebase Coral became a case study in military ethics classes. Jack's video testimony was shown to new recruits as an example of moral courage. General Stone retired and wrote a book about institutional failure and individual integrity. The reforms were implemented, then gradually weakened, then forgotten, the way all reforms are eventually forgotten when the people who demanded them move on. But some things persisted. Jack's memorial stone still stood in Arlington. Vincent's grave in Pennsylvania was tended by his sons and grandchildren. Doc's memoir was read by veterans who needed to know they were not alone in carrying weight. Preacher's sermons were recorded and shared online, reaching people far beyond his small Atlanta congregation. And Liz, in her quiet way, continued the work her father and Vincent and all the warriors had done, which was to tell truth in a world built on convenient lies, to honor sacrifice in a culture that preferred to forget, to remember the complicated reality of men who had killed and saved and broken and tried to heal, who had done terrible things for reasons they believed were good and carried the consequences without asking for absolution. On the 20th anniversary of Jack's death, Liz stood again at his grave. She was 53 now, gray in her hair, lines in her face, carrying her own weight of years and choices and the small griefs that accumulate in any life fully lived. She carried her father's rifle one last time, and as the sun set over Arlington, casting long shadows across the white stones, she made a decision. She would donate the rifle to the Smithsonian, where it would be displayed alongside Jack's letters and Vincent's testimony and the full story of Firebase Coral. Future generations would see it and understand what it represented. The weight of 127 kills, the grace of 143 saves, the cost of truth, the price of honor, the impossible burden of being a warrior in a country that asked everything and gave nothing back. But more than that, they would understand that warriors were human, complicated and contradictory, capable of extraordinary violence and extraordinary love, broken by what they had seen, but still capable of moments of profound grace. She placed the rifle on her father's grave one last time, her hand resting on the worn stock where Jack's hand had rested 10,000 times. "You can rest now, Dad," Liz said. "Your truth is told, your honor restored, your daughter at peace. You do not have to carry it anymore. None of you do." And in that moment, standing in the fading light of a November evening, 20 years after her father's death, Liz Harrigan felt something shift inside her. Not healing exactly. Healing was too simple a word for the work of grieving, but acceptance, understanding, the knowledge that love does not always look the way we want it to, but it is still love, still valuable, still worth honoring. She picked up the rifle and walked away, not looking back, knowing her father's ghost was not behind her, but inside her, part of who she was, part of what she would become, part of the legacy she would pass on to whatever came next. The last good shot had been fired. The truth had been told. The weight had been shared, and in 400,000 graves across Arlington, warriors slept under white stones, their names carved deep, their stories slowly fading from memory, but not gone. Not yet. Not as long as someone still came to speak their names and tell their truths and acknowledge that they had been here, had served, had sacrificed, had mattered. The sun set, the gates of Arlington closed, the living went home to the complicated work of living, and the dead remained, patient and silent, waiting for the next person who would come to remember them, to honor them, to carry their stories forward into a future they had died trying to protect. In the end, that was all any of them could ask, to be remembered, to have their truth told, to matter to someone after they were gone. Jack Harrigan had that. Vincent Castle had that. All the brothers had that. And it was enough. It had to be enough because it was all we had.